Hello and welcome to the Growing Healthy Families podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Scott Haggerty. On this show, I interview the world's top health experts so that you can know with certainty what it takes to give your family a life of epic health and wellness.
As parents, we don't want to see our kids struggle. I knew that he had the potential, and I knew that something needed to be done.
It was hard. We would get frustrated. We didn't know how to deal with it. I was more emotional about it.
Sure that, we're here. Amen to that, brother. Amen to that. Healthy Families podcast. My name is Dr. Scott Haggerty, and moms and dads, I'm really excited for you to be watching this podcast with us today, because I have someone whose yoga practice has really dramatically influenced and changed the way that I train, the way that I exercise, and really importantly, the way that I view physical fitness and yoga. So the man in front of you here, this is Dean Pohlman, and he is the founder of ManFlow Yoga. Dean, thank you so much for being with us today.
Hey, Scott. Thanks for the great intro. Thanks for having me.
Oh, absolutely. And so for the moms and dads who are watching this, I want you to know that the reason I invited Dean on is because I personally have been following what he's been doing with yoga practice for a long time. Long before there was a ManFlow Yoga website, there was a ManFlow Yoga YouTube channel. And I began doing the workouts, and I saw tremendous benefits. And to be quite honest, I got my butt handed to me on a number of them, some memorable workouts that I really enjoyed. And so as time has gone on, I've also told tons of my patients about doing ManFlow Yoga. So, Dean, I would love for you to just give everybody your background, because you obviously have a long history with yoga, but it started somewhat unconventionally. So why don't you talk about your background?
Yeah, sure. So, and I'll try to make this as abbreviated as possible. But my background is I've been an athlete my entire life. I played soccer, baseball, lacrosse. I mean, pretty much everything, football growing up. And I kind of focused on lacrosse as I got older and got into high school and got into college. But I've always been just a very active, sports-oriented guy. And I've done, the typical athletic workouts. So I've done weight training. I've done a lot of conditioning, a lot of sprints, a lot of, I've dabbled in CrossFit. I've done a bunch of different types of workouts. One day I stumbled into a yoga studio. I was looking for the tailor, and I decided to, and I literally stumbled into a yoga studio. And I decided, okay, well, whatever, I'll take it. I'll try it out. And it, kind of like you said before, I got my butt handed to me, and it was probably the toughest workout that I've ever done. And it just showed me how many ways that I was not as strong as I thought I was. And I've always been like the best. I've always been in the best shape. Doesn't matter like where I've been. It doesn't matter what the group I was with. I was always pushing myself to run faster, to go longer, to push myself harder than everyone else. And people have always looked to me for advice on fitness. So, when I started doing yoga, they were like, "What? Why are you doing yoga now?" And I'm like, "Well, I just realized, like, I thought that I was in really good shape, but I'm finding all these ways that I'm not in really great shape, right? I'm finding that I really have no mobility. I don't have much. I thought I had really strong core, but I don't have a lot of hip or core awareness. My shoulders are absolute garbage. So I was just finding all of these things about myself that other fitness modalities or other types of fitness didn't address. Mm-hmm. And so, I kept doing yoga initially because I wanted to get stronger in all these other ways, these ways that, my weight training and my sprinting did not address. I never really knew how to do restorative stretching. I didn't know how to take care of my body. I'd never done mobility work. I'd done some light stretching, but the kind of stretching where you're sitting in a field and you're holding your arm and you're just watching a geese fly by, right? You're not like you're not actually focusing on the stretching. And what happened was after doing yoga for a couple months, I noticed that my body was changing dramatically. I was actually getting a lot more lean. I was still maintaining muscle, but I was getting a lot more cut. My body felt a lot better. The flexibility just felt way better. I was much more aware of my body. and I noticed that my performance in other areas was getting better. And so, it was kind of at that point like, wow, I started doing this because it was a challenge, but I'm doing it and I'll continue to do it now because it showed me, how I can actually get results doing this type of stuff. And that was kind of how it all started. And the YouTube thing, which you mentioned, the YouTube channel began because I wanted more guys to actually give yoga a chance. And this was back in 2012, 2013. And I don't know, I mean, no one's going to know this as well as I do, but the vibe back then, or the general kind of view of yoga in 2012 was not like, it was not something that guys typically did. It's totally different now. It's 2019 now, and it's changed dramatically. But back then, most guys who were going to yoga studios, they were like one of two men in the studio, right? It was not like now in Austin, and I don't go to yoga classes that much anymore, but now in yoga classes, it can often be more men than women. So it is, it's changing. It's changed significantly, but back then, not many guys were doing yoga. So I decided to create a YouTube channel that was specifically for guys, to help show them, hey, yoga is really good for you, and it can get you, in great shape, and you can do it even if you don't look like a typical yoga person.
Mm-hmm.
And back then, the whole goal was like, I'm gonna get people ripped with yoga, and then it changed dramatically. It changed pretty significantly after that, and now our focus is much more on overall health and wellness and movement, much more what I would say noble fitness goals, as opposed to let's be 23 and get jacked. But yeah, so that was kind of how it started, and it's evolved into whatever it is today. So yeah, that's the quick story.
It's good though, because I very much reflect where you are, and I started into yoga as a former competitive bodybuilder. And
Okay.
like you, I absolutely went into a power yoga class, a 90-minute power yoga class, my first class, and it destroyed me.
Yeah.
And I so much appreciate what you said, that you didn't realize how weak and imbalanced you were in so many areas, because it does. It shows you that you're oftentimes not as complete as you feel.
Right.
And now obviously I'm a good bit older than you. I'm going to be 44 this year. And one of the things that you said really stuck. You talked about how you noticed that your body began to feel different.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's important because a lot of people who've never done yoga, especially guys, I oftentimes, even when I talk about recommending people try man flow yoga, is I always say it's like taking miles off of the car.
Mm-hmm.
It literally, especially in guys who are middle-aged athletes like I am, it allows you to feel younger than your years.
Yeah. Yeah, that is very true.
Yeah, and I think that that's something a lot of people don't really think about, is we get so used to dealing with aches and pains and imbalances, not realizing there are ways like yoga to really address that. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, that's actually something that we hear a lot from people who are using Manflow yoga regularly. People report, after doing it for a few weeks, they realize that their body has gotten better because they're not noticing their pains and aches anymore. They wake up one day and they think, oh, I haven't had back pain in 2 weeks. Weird.
Mhm.
So it's that is something that happens. You just feel better. We try to as much as we try to emphasize we say, hey, you're going to work on your body composition too, but I think the most noticeable benefit is just the way that your body feels when you're doing these workouts consistently. You just feel so much better.
Yeah, it's totally true. And I think I mentioned this to you in a message I sent to you, is that one of my patients here, he's been doing the Manflow yoga workouts now for about 2 months.
Mm-hmm.
And he is an avid golfer, and he's a gentleman who's in his 60s, and he's been really dedicated. He's doing it like 5 to 6 times per week. And Kevin,
Wow.
if you're watching this, I'm calling you out because this is you, and I'm proud of you, man. So he comes back reporting to me every time I see him how much he loves the benefits that he has seen from doing yoga, because
Mm-hmm.
he's been doing the programs religiously, and his golf game is better than what it's been in years. He
Yep.
feels better and he recovers better from playing golf. And this is a guy who's, he's been involved in fitness and athletics forever, but he noticed that the single biggest change came when he started doing man flow yoga as a part of his daily training regimen.
Yeah. And I think, he already had a lot of, he's obviously, if he's been active that long, he's already had a lot of the building blocks in place. But I think probably what Manful Yoga did for him is kind of what it did for me, and probably what it did for you is it showed you a lot of those aspects of fitness that you weren't working on. So, um, you know, a lot of other workouts just don't work on hip mobility. They don't work on thoracic mobility. You're not actually working on your spinal mobility. I mean, what exercise do you do in the weight room that helps you improve your range of motion for your spine? Nothing. So like actually just doing body weight and getting your body to increase its ability to twist and move. It really has a profound effect, especially because we haven't done any of those types of exercises, right? Your body hasn't had the chance to adapt to those exercises yet. So when you start doing yoga, especially those first 2 months, if you can really hit it hard, like your client did, then you really notice it because your body's like, what is happening? And it just changes so quickly. So I'm not surprised.
Yeah. Well, what's interesting too is a lot of people, especially men who've never done yoga before, don't realize that, there's so many carryover and crossover benefits. One of the things that really struck me when I began doing the Manful Yoga programs myself is how much I was actually able to gain strength, but my body composition, I've been a bodybuilder forever, right? Like it's always been a part of who I am. And I always thought that weights were the only way that I could improve my physique. And I noticed physically that my physique became better, more balanced, areas where I could never get to activate, like pecs. Some guys can touch bench press, their chest grows. Me, I could do 400 pounds and I wouldn't get hardly any pec development. Yet when I started doing, just body weight exercises and a lot of just the controlled contractions, sustained contractions, time under tension,
Yep.
I started noticing areas that were problem areas for me for many years began to improve. But I was able to go and do the movements from full ranges of motion, which I had never addressed as a bodybuilder.
Yeah.
And it's really neat when you can see that kind of a transformation using yoga, because most people don't think that I can transform my body, add muscle mass, add size by doing body weight movements.
Yeah, absolutely. It's that emphasis on body control. It's that emphasis on building whatever you want to call it. You can call it mobility in the sense of motor control. You can call it muscle activation. You can call it, increased muscle fiber recruitment. It doesn't matter what you call it, but the point is that you're getting those muscles to function and to fire at their, at a much higher capacity. I don't want to put like a percentage on it because that would be relative, but your point is you're getting your muscles to actually work at a much higher capacity, and that does translate into increased hypertrophy. And so there's not like what am I trying to say here? There's indirect ways to build muscle. Like I tell people all the time, I get every day this morning, I've had 3 people ask me, is all you do yoga? Is all you do yoga? There's no way you built that muscle from doing yoga. I'm like, no. And I don't claim to, I don't say that I only do yoga. Yes, I lift weights and I've done stuff my entire life, but because I'm doing yoga, I'm able to build muscle much more efficiently. So it's an indirect way of helping you get much stronger.
Mm-hmm. Well, and one of the great things that it does is it allows you to stay super balanced.
Mm-hmm.
Most people who do conventional weightlifting, they become very restricted in the way they move, don't they?
Yeah, I point them out. I laugh at them, honestly, when I'm walking and I see the guy like, you look ridiculous, dude. I do. I'm sorry. That's just what I do because they're trying so hard, but they're like, ask them to like turn around or like look behind them and they're can't move, right?
Yeah.
But I just can't imagine not being able to move,
Yeah, I know. And it's something that I think a lot of people just get used to, but if you're like that when you're weightlifting, the carryover later on is that you become progressively more restricted.
Yeah.
And then when joints can't move, then they start to hurt, don't they?
Right. Yeah. I see those people and I think, man, like you've got a lot of muscle now, but I would not want to be you when you hit your late 40s. Like you're not going to be able to move.
Yeah.
I don't know. I just think it's if people understood, and that's a huge thing, that we see from our members. We actually, so just kind of to talk, kind of going off on a tangent, we do member talks
Yeah.
for our community, which is when we actually set up, week of afternoons where we have 20-minute blocks, and we just get on the phone and we call our members and we talk with them and we try to understand them. And what we've noticed are so many people who are using these programs are, they're not the people who are trying to get ripped quick. They're the people who are more longevity minded. And so I think the people who are, what I'd like to say, who are, let's just call it longevity minded, who want to prevent injury, who want to be physically capable of doing what they want to do for as long as they can, they understand that mobility is important.
Yep.
And so they're starting to do this stuff. So it's just a matter of, trying to, how can we convey that imagery to people that, hey, this is really good for your longevity, but you're also going to, but it's also sexy, right? That's the challenge with, that's the big challenge with yoga, is people don't see it, especially guys, like, well, I don't see a yoga instructor having the body type that I want, right? For the most part. And you do have a lot of guys who do want, a thinner body type or more toned, but most guys want to have muscle in their upper body. They want to be bigger in the shoulders. And, so you don't see that with a lot of yoga, which is kind of why I developed, which is a large factor of how manful yoga evolved into more of a strength building. Because that's not just what other guys want. That's also what I wanted to get from my yoga. But I have a feeling I just inadvertently took you over into the next topic. But let's see what other questions you have to ask.
That was actually great, because that's what I wanted to talk about specifically, because when I've done the workouts, it's been amazing how much strength it requires to go and do a lot of the movements. But let's talk about that, because there very much is a difference between somebody that does more traditional yoga versus a fitness-based yoga, which is what you've created. So
yeah,
let's talk a little bit more about what that looks like and how you structure the workouts, so that when people are targeting fitness and balance and performance, how you're able to achieve that through yoga.
Sure. Yeah. And I have to make this distinction a lot, because, I'll talk about the benefits of yoga. But then I kind of have to make an asterisk after that and say, this isn't typical benefits of yoga. This is benefits of people who are doing manful yoga, because it's really different. And, it's because of the emphasis on muscle engagement and muscle activation, and also on the technique. So those are the two things that really stand out with what we're doing with manful yoga. In a typical yoga class, you'll have someone get into, let's just say, a lunge position, right? And you'll have them focus on their breathing. You might have them say, okay, and you're going to feel a stretch here as you're doing this. In manful yoga, I'm actually going to cue the proper muscle engagement. So I'm going to tell you to engage your glutes. I'm going to tell you to squeeze your legs toward one another. So your front leg is going to squeeze back. Your back foot is going to squeeze forward. You're going to make sure that your abs are tight. You're pulling your belly button toward your spine. So there's an entirely different aspect of technique and muscle engagement that we're going to focus on in manful yoga workouts. On top of that, we're always going to start with some form of muscle activation. So there is a warm-up phase involved. We're not going to jump straight into sun salutations where you do a forward fold without any muscle engagement, because that's just a really good way to injure your back. There's a lot of, other differences. There's much more emphasis on isometric strengthening. So instead of holding the pose for maybe 5, 10, 15 seconds, we're actually holding the pose for 45, 60, 75, 90 seconds, getting you to that point where you're getting tired, but you're also continually improving that muscle activation. And that carries over into other workouts. It's one thing that I noticed after starting to do yoga, kind of the way that I was doing it, and the way that it developed, it did develop out of a desire of me to learn more about the postures, and I had to really, really dig deep to find that information, find the proper muscle activation, and had to borrow from other types of exercise. I had to borrow from bodyweight exercise. I had to borrow from physical therapy techniques, which is a huge part of what we do. A lot of very A lot of exercises you'll find in physical therapy are going to be part of man flow yoga workouts, because physical therapy is a really good way of getting stronger and preventing injury. So, why not do it in a workout? But what I noticed after, starting to incorporate that is that my other workouts got so much more efficient. Like, I don't need to go spend 90 minutes at the gym to get a good workout, because whenever I'm doing any exercise, my entire body is working because I've developed that muscle activation. I've trained it so that everything is activating the way it's supposed to. So, I can finish a workout in 35 minutes and just be totally exhausted, and I don't have to, and I'll be sore for days afterwards because that muscle activation is that, that high. But yeah, we try to make it, and that's not to mention also the fact that guys aren't as flexible. We're also making workouts for people who have not been doing yoga for a long time, right? People who are beginners to yoga. Mm-hmm. So they need modifications. They're not going to jump straight into a yoga class and be able to do the postures like the yoga instructor or like the other people there who have been doing yoga for months and months. And it is true that yoga studios don't really do a great job of working with beginners, because yoga studios are focused on the experience of yoga. They want you to come in because that's what the majority of their consumers are looking for. They want the experience of yoga, the spiritual aspects. They want to come and do the corpse pose at the end and lay on the ground for 5 minutes. So if you had an instructor kind of doing what I did, you have a lot of people leaving the class or they just wouldn't come back because they're like, oh, I don't want to have my form corrected, or I don't want that much emphasis on strength, or, I don't want someone telling me what to do. I'm just here to relax and to stress relief. And, so the reason why people don't, I'm going into a lot of different stuff here, but the reason why yoga instructors don't talk about technique that much is because they're taught not to. Mm-hmm. Most yoga instructors are taught to only give 1 or 2 cues per exercise. And I'll give you 10 in 30 seconds. Like, I have no shame doing that. But a lot of yoga instructors, and the way that I was taught, was you don't want to give too many people too many cues, because you want to shut up and let them do their thing. And that's just not what I do. I want people to make sure they're doing the technique correctly and getting as much as they can from the workout. So I do kind of continuously coach people and give them cues to make sure they're getting as much as they can from the exercise. So that's kind of a, I think that covered most of the main points, what makes Manflow yoga different from a traditional yoga workout.
Yeah, and honestly, that's probably one of the bigger things. I'm glad you spent so much time talking about that, because especially because obviously this is done virtually, right? Like, it's not an in-person yoga class. You're not going to come put hands on. One of the things I think that probably is my favorite things of all about the way the classes work is that you do spend so much time teaching people about cueing, positioning, contraction, muscle activation, because, obviously I've experienced it, and I've echoed it to a lot of people when I talk to them about trying Manflow yoga. But the big thing that the gentleman, Kevin, who I was talking about, that he reflected back when we were talking, is he said, it's just so good to have somebody when I'm in the middle of learning the poses telling me what I'm supposed to feel, how I'm supposed to use my feet, how I'm supposed to be using the muscles, because those pieces are training his nervous system to get the benefits he's supposed to from it without even having anybody that have hands-on. And that's more important, is him being able to become body aware to learn those postures. And once you learn to feel it, once you're able to go and contract, you can position yourself more effectively time after time after time. Yeah. And they'll benefit from the workout. And that was one of my favorite experiences, that is when you went through the exercises, because you continuously cue and coach while you're in poses too. Remember to squeeze this. Remember to pull your feet towards each other when you're in a pose. And all of the little things that as you start to fatigue out, you'll forget because you're just trying to hold the pose. Those little subtle reminders make sure that you're not going to lose form in the exercises, and you're going to get maximum benefits from it. And so moms and dads, if you're listening to this, that is a massive, massive benefit when you're trying to use yoga for fitness, yoga for strength building, body comp, yoga for rehabilitating your body. Is that specific thing right there, is that you've got Dean coaching you at every step of the way when you're in the poses to make sure you're getting the most out of the experience.
Yeah. So three things there. Number one, I've had people tell me that they've learned more in one yoga session online with me than they have from yoga instructors for a year.
Yeah.
And that's typical, honestly. That's something I hear a lot because I just teach so differently than what you'll get in most yoga studios. Another part of that is you're not going to, if you don't have the same mobility levels as a yoga instructor, you're not going to understand the proper way to feel, because they're cueing you. Instead of saying, do it like this to fit your body, they're saying, do what I'm doing and try to copy me. And so and they're not saying that. I won't say that they are trying to say, just do what I'm doing. But when you're in a yoga studio, and if you're not going to make that many cues, then that's just what's going to happen, because that's the only reference you have. That's the only way you have to learn, is visually. So by introducing the concept of modifications, like, hey, if you're new, I want you to do it like this instead of like this. And you should be feeling this in your body. You should be feeling this stretch in your hips and this muscle engagement in your core. Now we're teaching people how to do the pose in a way that works for them, instead of them just trying to mirror someone else. And that's huge. And then lastly, that aspect of motor control and just building awareness in your body. If you don't have control over your body, that's the first step. I think a lot of us, probably all of us, do this backwards. We don't have any kids working out who, there are no weight training programs that say, all right, hey, we're going to do squats now. We're going to do weighted back squats. We're going to load with the bar and you're going to do 10. No one says, I'm going to have you get on your butt. We're going to go and do a bridge pose and you're going to work on engaging your glutes. No one does that. I've never seen that anywhere in any youth training program. And that's what people should be doing first. And the reason why that's so important is because kids spend, and most adults too, what are we doing during the day? We're sitting at a desk, chair, right? So your body, what your body naturally would have done, that muscle activation that would have naturally occurred, is being inhibited because your butt is dead all day. Your core doesn't do anything. So we literally have to retrain the body to get those muscles working again. And that's why doing this stuff is important for everybody. I hate saying this is fitness for everybody, but this is something that everyone needs to be doing. It doesn't have to be called man flow yoga, but you should be training muscle activation. You should be training muscle control. And the best way to do that is by doing isometric strengthening exercises, very similar to what you will do in a physical therapy setting, which is what our warm-ups look like.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting that you talked about the glutes being inhibited, because, one of the first interviews I did for our podcast was with Dr. Stu McGill, and he's the world's foremost authority on low back disorders. And, one of the things he always talks about is this concept of gluteal amnesia, meaning we forget how to turn on our butts, right? And so
that's such a nice way of saying it.
Yeah, right. But it's so true, because, most of us, because the vast majority of people have jobs where we're desk bound, because we're not, actively using our glutes. If you don't turn them on, then you're going to dump into your low back and you're going to hurt your low back when you try and do an exercise. Yep. And, it's necessary that you turn the glutes on, because the glutes also fire the core. And those things that you just said are so critical, because, our hip flexors get tight. And when the hip flexors get tight, they turn off the glutes and they turn off the core. So you actually have to change the way the brain is using the muscles. So moms and dads, if you've never heard that term of muscle activation, or getting the muscles to fire, like Dean just said, that's a really critical concept, because, we live in a world where more than 90% of us are going to hurt our low backs at some point in time. And the vast majority of the reasons come back to those simple imbalances, is that we don't know how to use our butts anymore. And if we could get the glutes and the core to start to fire, then you can dramatically decrease the likelihood of an injury from common exercise and just day-to-day life, right?
Absolutely. So moms and dads, or anyone listening to this, if your knees hurt after you work out or during you work out, or if your low back hurts the day after a workout, that's a sign that this is kind of exactly what you need to work on. That's symptomatic of not activating your hips, not activating your thigh muscles properly. and not using your abs. So when when those muscles aren't firing correctly, the joints pick up the slack, right?
Yep.
So think of your body as a system. I like to think of it as like, let's say you have a 6-person team, right? From your knees up through your core. Now, if 3 of those people don't come to work, right, now you've got 3 people left, and those 3 people left at work are your low back, your knees mostly, or whatever that is. But the point is that, they are forced to pick up the slack because you basically got these other muscle groups that aren't doing anything. So if your glutes are never sore, you're probably not using your glutes. If your thighs are really sore the next day, and this used to be me, my quadriceps were sore all the time, but my glutes were nothing. And I thought that, it was funny because my mom used to make fun of me. She's like, "You've got a big butt like your dad, ha 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 ha." And so I thought that just meant, oh, well, I must have strong glutes. No, it doesn't. It just means that that's how your body is. It has nothing to do with whether or not your glutes are strong. So for a while, I thought that I had really strong glutes, and really, that was just my genetics. So, if your glutes aren't getting sore from your workouts, and your core is not getting sore after your workouts, and especially your VMOs, this is the muscle that's kind of inside and above your knee, kind of leading up through your groin. If that muscle right above the knee is not sore, then that's also a big issue for your knee. So those are just some common indications of if your muscles aren't firing correctly, that's what you're going to notice.
Yep. Well, Dean, I'm glad you brought up this whole concept of activating those muscles, because let's talk about like real life carryover, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we talked about Kevin, who's the golfer, right? So for a golfer to be able to protect themselves, right, like a la Tiger Woods, right, not having repetitive back injuries, is you need to be able to have good mobility in the hips. You need to be able to go and fire your glutes, have stability through the knees, stability through the ankles, and stability through the core, good range of motion through the mid-back. But it requires those muscles to be able to fire, work in sequence, and be strong and balanced. And if not, the body always finds the weak link, doesn't it?
Right. Yep. It's I like that. The body does not compromise.
Right.
It's like it's kind of like you can send an email to someone and say, "Ooh, that's not actually going to work for me. I'm going to be 10 minutes late. Is that okay?" Cool. You can't send an email to your body and say, "Hey, like I can't, I didn't have time to work on my hip mobility today, so can you just allow my knees to be okay?" Okay, thanks. That's not how your body works. You can't just make an excuse for it. Yep. And and you can make an excuse to your trainer, you can make an excuse to, whoever's trying to help you, but ultimately you are going to be experiencing that pain if you don't do what we're trying to tell you to do or recommending. So there is there's no negotiation with your body. Whatever you give it, it is going to give back.
Yep. And one thing I think it's important too, because so many people use yoga as a way to try and enhance performance, right? You see guys like Kevin Love and Eddie George and all these guys who are famous athletes that are doing yoga now. And one of the big things that if you've not done yoga, one of the big benefits is bodies that are in balance perform the best when it's time to compete, right? It's the guy that is super imbalanced that's going to struggle, right? And we see this in all aspects of sports. You see guys like like Kevin Love who's embraced yoga, right? Because it's something that's so dramatically helped his body to be able to deal with the load of sports and to balance himself out. And you see more and more guys going down this road because it's an essential for not just preventing injuries, but also optimizing performance. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, you see that, and it's not even just it's more than you mentioned the big names like Kevin Love and LeBron James is doing it. But pretty much every D1 football team, every NFL team, every MLB team, they're all doing some sort of yoga at this point. Yep. That shift happened within the last few years, and most people are doing yoga. Like I've worked with the lacrosse team at University of Texas here. I've worked with some high school teams here. People are understanding now that yoga is part of, is just another tool in athletes' toolboxes. So, if athletes are doing it, then, if you're interested in your performance, then, it should be something that you're doing too, obviously.
Yeah, completely agree. Dean, one of the things I like is that you really try and make sure that when you on your membership side of your website, that you have a lot of very very unique, very catered workouts. Why don't you talk about some of the different types of workouts that if people are looking to learn more about, like what's available, what's under the hood? What are some of the
Yeah,
ones that
so there are a lot of very specific things. So like one example, we've got a workout library, right? We've got over 320 workouts, and we've made a lot of workouts for specific situations. One that comes to mind is sciatica. So not everyone who has sciatic pain necessarily has sciatica. But if you have sciatica symptoms, then it's a sign of it's a sign of well, it's your piriformis is annoyed, because your sciatic nerve is annoyed because your piriformis is tight. But what that means is you're probably sitting too much, you're not using your core enough, and your hips are probably immobile. So we've created a workout called Yoga for Sciatic Pain that directly addresses this and shows you how to modify your workout. So if you have sciatic pain, this is how you should address yoga postures. Because a lot of people have back pain, or they have sciatic pain, and they think, oh, yoga will help. And then they go to a yoga class and they do a forward fold, right? They go into flexion with their spine or rounding their back. And that just makes it feel even worse, because that's exactly what exacerbates the issue. So what we've done with the workout library and with a lot of our programs in general has been to create workouts for specific situations. Because if you were to just go and do a general yoga class, you might be just making the issue worse. There are certain movements that you'll definitely want to avoid. Like if you have a herniated disc, for example, I'm not gonna give you a workout where you're doing a lot of spinal flexion. We need to work on your core strength. We need to get you into doing some extension safely in a way that doesn't aggravate your spine. But there are things that you don't want to go in and do like a general one size fit all. I'm going to go through, everything I can. There are specific things that you should be doing, and we've created workout libraries with specific workouts to actually address that. We have a lot of programs that we've developed. Some are specific to knees. We've got a bulletproof your knees, a bulletproof your shoulders, and a bulletproof your back program. The bulletproof your back program is probably is one of our top 3 programs. And that program has had tremendous results for people. It's just 10 minutes per day, and it helps with immediately getting rid of back pain. We've got I think our most popular program is called the Strength Foundations course. And this is the one that goes through muscle activation. If I could have renamed the course, I could have called it the muscle activation course, because it just goes through muscle activation for your full body. So it really gets into a lot of those issues we were talking about before with the muscular imbalances caused by lack of muscle activation, and then teaching you how to do yoga in a way that builds strength. I also thought of calling it like the yogi's revisionist course, because it's a way for you to learn how to do yoga in a way that's strength focused instead of more passive flexibility, which is typical from other yoga instructors. So, we've created the members area is a growing living thing that I created in 2016. And as I've just, every week we add a new workout, and this is what I spend my time on, is this thing. So we're very plugged into our community and creating workouts based on what they're asking, and giving them specific solutions to their specific challenges. So that's kind of what we're trying to do with that.
I think it's great that you talked about really having specific challenges, and one of the great things is that if you come in and you do have a back issue, you can start addressing those issues. If you're looking for strength, if you're looking for flexibility, there's programs specifically catered to wherever you are. And so you can, and one of the things I oftentimes will tell people who are experiencing yoga for the first time, aren't necessarily trying to rehab an issue, is that they should experience the different levels, right? Go through and do days where it's low to moderate intensity, do days where you're really working on strength, and work on experiencing the different flow through the week of what your body will do when you challenge it running through those cycles. And I think it's great for people to be able to experience what it's like to develop strength-based mobility, right? Activating the core, but then really try some of the strength ones, because I think what you'll find is that I use the word humbling. It can be very humbling to do yoga for strength, because like many guys come in and we think we're strong, and then you go through and you have to use your core for 30 to 60 minutes, and you realize they don't have a core.
Yeah.
And it's great when you find out what what your body's really, where you're deficient, and then what you need to
Yeah.
work on, and then see the results.
Yeah,
Because
I think it's really surprising how isometric strength is so much different than faster concentric and eccentric strength.
Yep.
Like if you're doing, like, let's say I'm just gonna have you sit on the ground and like lift a leg up. Just sit on the ground and lift your legs up. Just try it. And hold it for a minute. It's really hard.
Yeah.
And if we're used to doing, we can run a mile or we can, sprint 100 yards, but if I have you sit on the ground and lift your leg up and you've never done that before, you start to reach muscle fatigue in 3 seconds and your leg just starts going, and it's really fun. It's really humbling to see how challenging something that's seemingly so simple can be.
It's so true. But when you start working on all of those little muscles, all those little neural pathways, the body balances fast and it gets really strong. And moms and dads, if you're watching this, that's probably one of the greatest values is you'll realize as you start experiencing these movements and challenging yourself in ranges and exercise that you maybe have never done before, you'll find all the little weak spots and they start to get stronger and you start seeing success. And that's one of the greatest things about it from someone who's been there and done it, is that when you see the accumulation of I'm stronger, a workout that kicked my butt before, I was able to go and, instead of, only be able to hold that plank for 30 seconds, I was able to get to 45 and then do a minute. And seeing the accumulation of success, that's huge. And you'll notice that you're physically, mentally, and emotionally going to change as you start to see all of that accumulate on your body.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely.
Yeah.
Totally.
It's great. And so, moms and dads, I'm sure by now many of you are probably, you're probably curious, right? If you're really wondering what this is like, I'm sure you're probably thinking, where can I find out more about this? And so, Dean, you're out there on social media, you've got the website. So where, if moms and dads want to learn more, where can they go to find more information about Manflow Yoga and what you have to offer?
Sure. So yeah, my website is where we put all of our structured programs are on our website. We do have a lot of content on YouTube, but it's not exactly structured. So if you're looking for a structured program that you can, especially for busy moms and dads, this is so easy. You could go on YouTube and you can poke around in workouts and you might find what you're looking for, but more likely than not, you'll get 10 minutes into your workout and then realize, oh, this isn't what I wanted. So if you want to save time and just follow a set schedule of workouts and just get straight to what you need to do, the members area is awesome for that. And that's part of my website at manflowyoga.com. And if you're a member, you just get access to everything. We used to do things individually, but we just made it really simple. Just join the members area, get access to everything. And that's a really easy way to get started. We also have a lot of stuff, as I mentioned, on YouTube, stuff on social media, on Facebook, on Instagram. I've put out a few DVDs. If you're into DVDs, I put out a few DVDs on Amazon. Yoga Boost is kind of our best selling. That's typically in the top 5 of the exercise and fitness section. Usually, hanging out with Jillian Michaels and those other fitness personalities. We also put out a book last year. I actually have one here. I'm just going to grab it. Called Yoga Fitness for Men, and it is called Yoga Fitness for Men, but it's equally accessible to people who have not really done a lot of yoga, who are not as flexible. And that is a really awesome book that goes through a lot of it you were discussing before, like what you should be feeling, what you should not be feeling, how to modify if you're not as flexible, how long should you hold it for, what is the target area, what are the benefits. So that's a really cool book for that. And that book has done incredibly well. It's been translated into 3 languages. It's probably sold over 30,000 copies in the first year. Very popular in the UK. And that's available anywhere books are sold. So, if you're looking for a resource that you can use to kind of learn yoga, that book is awesome. And if you're looking for more of an online structured program to follow, be sure to check out my website at manflowyoga.com/join, and you can learn all about the members area and all the cool stuff we have there.
Awesome. And what we'll do is we'll make sure to drop links in the show notes. So when you guys are watching this, you'll be able to go and have direct links back to all Dean's social media. back to his website, and we'll also drop a link into his book so you can purchase that as well, because moms and dads, I can tell you from someone who's been following Dean's career right from the very beginning when his YouTube channel launched, it's gold. You'll really see some major league benefits. You'll improve your fitness, you'll improve your performance. Your body will begin to feel better, and you'll be stronger than what you've ever been. I guarantee it.
Thank you. Oh yeah, and we'll also be doing we'll be doing a 20% special code for you guys. Just use Dr. Scott, Dr. Scott, and that'll get 20% savings on any plan you select for the members area. So
awesome. Thank you so much for doing that for all of our viewers, Dean. And I think that anybody who's watching this will get lots of value. So moms and dads, here's our action points today, okay? So when we get done, let's make sure that you go to righttomanflowyoga.com, check it out, okay? Enter the promo code Dr. Scott so that you can get in and you can get 20% off and experience the benefits. Make sure you check out his book, follow him on social media. This way here you can dive all in. Give it a full try, and I think what you'll find is, like I did, it'll change the way that your body feels, the way that you perform. And like I said before, it'll take miles off, and you'll really realize what your body is capable of when you do fitness-based yoga like they do on manflowyoga.com. So Dean, thank you so much for being with us today. Really appreciate your time. This was great. And moms and dads, thank you so much for being with us. So if you found value in this today, then do me a favor. I want you to share this episode with your friends and loved ones. Make sure that you subscribe to the Growing Healthy Families podcast, and make sure that you spread the word of health and fitness like we're doing here with Dean at manflowyoga.com and the Growing Healthy Families podcast. So moms and dads, thank you so much for being with us. God bless you all. Be elite.
Thank you for listening to the Growing Healthy Families podcast, the world's #1 source for health education. Make sure to go to iTunes or wherever you listen to podcasts and give us a review. Make sure to follow us on social media at the links listed in the show notes, and let us know what area of health you are struggling with so we can get you and your family on the road to epic health.